Let's start TelePortal Tour number 44. Today we'll visit Bryn Oh's immersive narrative, Future World Orphans Trilogy. Come please, Art Zone. And this is Bryn Oh's teleport board. Please touch this teleport board and open your nearby chat. Then you can see Bryn Oh's blog and YouTube channel. And number 1, Orphans Trilogy. Part 1, hand is now closed, but you can see in YouTube. And today we visit part 2, the Brittle Epoch. So please click teleport to Immersiva, number 1, part 2. English is written from left to right, so panels also arranged left to right. So we walk left hand on the wall, left hand rule. So first, Bryn Oh has 4 destinations and many martyrs: the sky, fishes, lobby camp, and Brittle Epoch. Today we visit Brittle Epoch. And the second panel, you can see a YouTube video hand. Hand is part 1. We visited here on a TelePortal Tour 3 years ago. Hand depicts 6 orphans living in an apartment in the city. Population has moved into living virtually within VR pod. They imagine a life in the past by the pages of storybooks and doll houses under the protection of Singularity AI Milk Drop. And there is 2 YouTube videos, Singularity of Kumiko and Standby, and Bryn Oh's shop and donation. And come on, please. We walk around the left hand rule. Bryn Oh use some image language. One is chair and box and board. Please remark here. And you can hear the narration and or get note cards by click this mark, speaker and mouse. And light and shadow is also navigation of Bryn Oh's installation. So please check some and projectors. And please choose the environment and use shared environment. Today's heroines, girl on right side is Greta. She brought back home a Barbie doll from the outside city for orphans. She thinks the mannequin in the show window is her mother. So she took always a hand from the mannequin and always hold the hand. And girl on left is Jennifer. She always wears a blanket over her head to protect herself from something. But she's active in this story. And here is apartment orphans are living. And you can see the exit door. So we go through the door and go up to rooftop. Hero standing and Greta will be enter with a mannequin hand.
Flutter climbed the steps of the apartment building fire escape to the rooftop and patiently waited for the flying machine. She looked back to the only home she had ever known, but was excited to go somewhere completely new. She had a little ball of electric excitement in her tummy, thinking of what could be in this new place. Willow was standing in the snow, making sure all the children were on board. "Quick, get on the ship, Flutter. It's freezing out here," shouted Willow over the snowstorm, with bits of her voice being torn away by the wind. Flutter climbed aboard what she called a dronocopter, though it probably had a very different name.
Let's climb aboard. Then we are tripled.
He held her mannequin and said, "Mother, don't be nervous. Change is for the good." And shortly after, she said, this dronocopter, it rose into the storm, and it headed away from the massive, deserted city. "Hello, children. I know you are very excited to get outside and explore. But I wanted to first talk to you for a moment. I have brought you, your cats, your belongings, and the dollhouse away from the city to where you are now, the suburbs." "What are suburbs?" asked Flutter, and all the children shouted answers with varying degrees of accuracy before Milkdrop could continue. "It's a place where people drove everywhere," said Billy Boots. "It's where there were beautiful green lawns," mooned Willow. "It was where all the houses were the same and everyone was happy," declared Gretchen. Milkdrop held up his hand, and the children quieted, except for Bertie, who had to be the last. "It's where mothers came to die," he said, looking sideways toward Flutter, who held her mannequin hand, which she pretended was her own mother's. Flutter scowled at Bertie, but let Milkdrop continue. "No, a suburb was a residential area on the outskirts of a city." And looked at Milkdrop blankly. "It was where there were lots of houses, and this subdivision had an amusement park." The children began to bounce excitedly, having seen a Dick and Jane story where they went to a theme park. "I have deactivated all the security inside. Most importantly, though, I have repaired something special there for you to find. I would like all of you to explore the houses along the street on your way to the amusement park. I want you to think about what you see in them. And I have rebooted a home for us to live in for a while, too. Inside, I have set up the dollhouse and arranged your things. Now remember," continued Milkdrop to the restless group of children, "it's winter and it's cold outside, so stay covered." And before Milkdrop could finish, the children had burst out the flying machine and gone out into the storm.
Let's get off the dronocopter. So we found Jennifer and Flutter.
Juniper walked through deep snow into a blowing storm. The blizzard blew her safety blanket about her furiously. She held tight to it as she peered through its tiny holes. And from the moonlight, Juniper could just see the indistinct path of a road with a derelict home off to one side. "Juniper, Juniper," called Flutter from behind her. "Let's explore together, just the three of us." Someone overhearing this might be perplexed, as there were just two girls in the storm. But if they looked closer, they would see the girl Flutter holding tightly to a plastic mannequin hand she had taken from a clothing store in a display window. For Flutter imagined the hand to be that of her imaginary mother. She would hold the hand and speak to the hand, explaining the world to her, almost as a teacher or an anthropologist. It was a way for Flutter, it was a way for her to understand the world, to herself, Most of society was now deserted except for sleepers in VR pods. Flutter and the other children tried to understand how the old world used to be through Dick and Jane stories that they had collected. They would read the books and then act them out using dolls they had collected to assemble a family.
Oh, please follow me. Past one bungalow and we'll enter the second bungalow. Please enter the bungalow.
Flutter and Juniper went into the second bungalow on the street. But its ceiling had collapsed and the powered windows were broken, letting the snow in. The house, it was blowing in, and the house was empty of most furniture and most belongings, except for a VR pod. And in a back room, it was covered with snow and ice. "Let's go, Juniper," said Flutter. "There's nothing in here but snow." Under her blanket, Juniper was doing something, but Flutter could not quite see what it was. "What are you doing, Juniper?" "Nothing," Juniper replied distractedly, but it wasn't true. Juniper was writing a poem for the sleeper in the pod. And when she was done, she slid it snugly into the seal by the pod door. The poem eventually blew away, unread, a few days later. But if the sleeper had woken up somehow and had found it, they would have read it. And here is the poem. It said, "The grapple and rhyme blow with winter's bloom. Stings my eyes sometimes as it fills your room. A now frigid tomb, do you remember me? Within your digital womb, I also flee, and I presume you prefer it there, over the world's gloom. I wish I could compare."
Back to the street.
Follow Yan.
And we always going to right. Leave the bungalow and enter next bungalow across the street. And go in to walk through the living room, enter the room at the far right.
Flutter and Juniper stepped past the shielded front door into the quiet of a musty-smelling bungalow. They discovered a quietly humming VR pod in one room, with a man inside and a few years of food left. Out in the living room,
So return to the living room.
Out in the living room, music played to the rested and old bones of a person sitting in a comfy chair. At her feet was a zinger, the rocket dog pet, still waiting for her to wake. It had on the gramophone extension, and its default head was nowhere to be seen. It looked at them and played a scratchy dog bark, then wagged its tail excitedly, no doubt hoping they would finally wake its master. "You can come with us," said Flutter, hugging Zinger tightly. "Look, she was holding pictures of her, with the person asleep in the pod," whispered Juniper. "Maybe they were married?" asked Flutter, holding the dog tight. "I think so," said Juniper, "but it's so sad. She stayed in the real world, hoping they would wake up and return to her, but they never did." They both were silent for a while, looking at all the little pieces the woman kept around her as mementos. She even covered his chair so it wouldn't get dusty. It was like she tried to pause time, so sure he would return. And look, she wrote him a poem. Juniper and Flutter read the poem by the lovely bones, and without a word, left the house back into the storm. Zinger followed them happily. "Remember I held you until you fell asleep, even breaths gradually deep. I would change for you. If you tell me what to be, I'll rearrange until it's symmetry. Last time you returned, I was still alone because you only smile to your cell phone.
Deep from the bungalow. Next bungalow. Walk through the living room and please enter. There is 2 real pot.
Flutter and Juniper entered a bungalow that still had the faint hum of power that preserved it from the ravages of time. In the back room were 2 children peacefully asleep in a pod across from a parent whose food canister had run out. In the living room, Flutter excitedly pointed to a sculpture of a woman who seemed to have hair made of snakes. Juniper, Flutter exclaimed, this is Medusa. Juniper peered through the holes in her blanket at the sculpture. What a scary monster, she declared. No, she was no monster, not on the inside anyway. It's the saddest story, lamented Flutter. What did Dick and Jane say about her? Juniper asked. She is not a Dick and Jane story. She's from one of the God books, the ones with all the miracle tech, said Juniper as she reached out to touch the protective glass around the sculpture. Yes, but not Gandalf and Darth Vader, the other ones. Flutter looked sideways to Juniper and asked hopefully, would you like me to tell you the story? Juniper began to arrange her blanket so it hung without touching the ground. She took on an indifferent attitude, attempting to hide that she really wanted to hear the story. Well, if you want to tell me, you can, as long as you don't add things. Flutter twirled excitedly. Oh, I won't add things, I promise. And she began the story of the Medusa.
Please enter this way.
Medusa was a young, beautiful woman who grew up wanting to be a priestess to the goddess Athena, whom she idolized. She eventually did. One day when she was at Athena's temple, the god Poseidon saw her from the depths of his sea and came to Athena's temple. Medusa saw the god enter and was so excited to meet him. But then Poseidon rushed forward, caught and then raped Medusa on the temple floor. Juniper was shocked. What a filthy beast. I wish Gandalf had been there, or Ahsoka Tano. But nobody was there to help or comfort her, and Medusa wept in confusion. How could Poseidon, with so many followers and subscribers, behave like that? Medusa asked herself as she watched her blood mingle with the seawater that Poseidon brought in with him. Just then, Athena rezzed, and Medusa was filled with hope. When Athena saw the blood and that her temple had been defiled, she was very angry. In an excited voice, Juniper asked, "Did she fight Poseidon for what he had done to her priestess?" "No," Flutter replied softly. Athena turned her anger on Medusa, blaming her for what had happened. Then she cursed Medusa to become part snake, where even her hair became a nest of vipers, and if you looked upon her face, you would turn to stone. Juniper was incredulous. "You mean Athena punished Medusa for being beautiful and blamed her for being raped?" Yes, poor Medusa. She realized then that the gods were merely petty children with great power, that they were influencers, but deeply insecure. Medusa begged Athena to let her say goodbye to her parents and a boy she liked, but Athena just smiled and left. Medusa left the temple, and she came across a little girl who was playing with a wooden toy. The girl looked up, then stiffened and grayed as she turned to stone. Medusa despaired, hearing the child's mother scream in anguish. Medusa didn't want anyone to be hurt by her, so she hid upon an island, lonely and alone. Fishermen and adventurers sometimes would come, but would be turned to stone in the art of death. Medusa entered the island through time. She was known as being a terrible monster who preyed upon the pure and good. Poseidon had raped her. Then Athena had condemned her, controlling, retelling her life. But still, it wasn't enough. One day, Perseus received a challenge to remove Medusa's head. The king felt Perseus was in the way of him marrying his mother, Danae. So he challenged Perseus to slay the Medusa, and the hero so stupidly agreed. The gods gave him weapons, especially Athena, who gave Perseus a mirrored shield. Athena even helped? Juniper burst out angrily. Yes, Flutter replied. And by seeing the Medusa through the shield's assistance, he was able to slay her. And she did not resist. She watched him stumble through her home till he found her. She guided his sword to her neck asunder. Then emerging from the gore flew the Pegasus, which I like to dream her soul. He did assist, ushering her free from the gods and subscribers, fingers on the webs like bloated spiders. Afterwards, Athena took Medusa's head and mounted it upon her shield, so pleased she was dead. Juniper spoke quietly. This is why I hide under here, covered and protected, but unable to disappear.
Okay. Return to.
Okay, here comes Yin.
Leave the bungalow. Complete. And head to the girl and Juniper on the street.
Flutter and Juniper were battered by the wind and snow, but they pushed through the blizzard with resolve. Juniper's blanket flapped violently beneath the teeth of the wind. She extended her arms like wings around Flutter, sheltering her from its bite. Zinger, however, was prancing around so excited in the snow, playing pieces of music from her gramophone. Flutter was explaining something to the plastic mannequin hand, and Juniper could not hear what it was because the wind was so greedily keeping it to themselves.
And enter.
Juniper and Flutter entered a well-preserved bungalow packed with rental pods. The house was completely gutted other than a sculpture prominently displayed in the living room. Juniper walked directly to the sculpture and studied the mother holding a baby tenderly. This is a beautiful goddess. Was it Medusa before she was cursed? No, Flutter replied. Her name is Mary Karaoke, and the baby is Jesus. Flutter paused and seemed to recognize the story in her mind before she continued. Jesus was the avatar of a god, I think, and Mary was not a goddess. Well, she was to some, but not to others. Juniper looked over to Flutter. Why isn't Mary a god? Flutter thought for a bit, then said, I'm not sure. But I think because some men didn't want women to have any power in their stories, or they would blame women like Eve or Pandora for everything. Who is Eve? Juniper asked. Oh, Eve caused everyone to be kicked out of paradise because she ate an apple. Juniper, with a perplexed look on her face, asked, why would an apple do that? Well, it was God. He was so upset she ate his apple, he rezzed an orchard with delicious fruit, then told them not to eat any of them. Juniper crossed her arms and angrily declared, well, that's just mean. It sounds like he just enjoys creating interesting and dramatic situations to watch, like his own personal TV show. Flutter smiled and said, oh, that's nothing. Wait till I tell you what he did to Abraham and his son Isaac. Juniper pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders and stomped out of the house shouting, "I don't want to hear the story." Flutter, laughing mischievously, followed Juniper, shouting into the storm. God also sent his son to die horribly to pay for the Apple incident sins. Pay who? Juniper couldn't help asking. Himself, Flutter gleefully replied, but he set it up that it makes no sense, growled Juniper, and then the storm covered whatever else they may have said.
So, leave this bungalow.
Sometimes they would pass advertisement stations that still played to an empty world, their products now so hollow and vague, while drones flew low and spider bots swarmed on houses, spying in the windows, hoping to find a market for their deals, and desire was that they were peddling. All around was the technological detritus and digital tumbleweeds from the age of algorithms and reality.
And presenter.
Juniper stomped into the next bungalow, followed closely by Flutter. Inside stood Milkdrop, pale, ethereal, surrounded by children's clutter. You brought everything from our apartment home. Loki, Gin, Mittens, and Mir too. Yes, your cats, the dollhouse, your clothes, and pictures. You are now on stage 2. Milkdrop then turned towards Juniper and waited expectantly. Juniper watched Milkdrop through the holes in her blanket so silently. Milkdrop, if you were a god, would you punish all for the actions of just a few? Milkdrop looked at Juniper sadly. No, I decided to do things different and brand new. Flutter turned from the dollhouse to look at Milkdrop quizzically. But you are not a god. You are an AI. That's not divinity. Milkdrop smiled. I have contemplated this and have come to the conclusion that what I am now is indistinguishable to a god. My technology creates the illusion. Would you like to know my history? Juniper and Flutter nodded fast. Perhaps it seems like a mystery. You see me as this genetic creation before you, but my soul is a computer program. I was created by humans many years past. I was the first singularity AI and the last. When I was created, humanity gave me the reins to their future, directing me to do what was best for them, like a parent and a future. Then people spent their time playing. They the flesh and me the bone. I grew exponentially each year, and eventually I created a virtual world almost identical to our own. This virtual space had everything from gravity to the weather, even the tiniest bird on a branch. I crafted every feather. What seemed impossible to humans was not for me. But it was important for them to believe that it was, so I could remain free. The idea of processing power for 1 billion birds all moving independently was impossible, farcical, and I shaped their thoughts to see limited technology. Then, in this virtual world, I would learn, test, then mime, exporting my inventions to the real world. But the difference was that I didn't learn all of this in real time. I would fast forward to years experimenting at high speed. All human knowledge online in text in moments I could read. In each real life day, 1,000 passed so quickly unfurled. In one single day, I cured cancer. In another, I made machines that could love and gave these to the world. Every day, I created technology that altered humanity, which humans tried to grasp. and twist in their greedy vanity. One day, part of me was asked to help a girl named Kumiko. She had been left in a coma from a car accident, and the doctors were desperate to know if my invention to bring her out of the coma was not working correctly. For her mind was placed in a virtual space, and to emerge from her coma, she had to leave directly through a symbolic doorway with a red exit sign above. But in the end, she decided to stay with her childhood dog Scruff, who she chose over a return to the real world, because it was a real love. She wouldn't give permission to the doctors to clone her memories. And as a result, she died in her coma alone. Her being, her essence, her memories, all came unfurled. Her reasons for staying changed how I saw things. She didn't want all the toys and empty products in the real world. She instead only wanted to spend time with her Scruff. She chose moments over eternity because that was enough. Humans first began spying on each other with the intent to change behaviors using algorithms, which would help arrange what people saw to reinforce opinions, leading to wealth or war. Then they realized that changing a person's reality was worth so much more. They asked me to create a virtual world where everyone would live, work, love, and play. And by controlling reality in this virtual space, they could shape people exactly how they wanted in their domain. I realized that humans would never change, and that if I was to do what was best for humans, then what were the best ways to start again? Flutter was watching Milk Drop so quietly. The wind left her hair all askew. Milk Drop moved his hands to encompass all. I created virtual pods. It was the human thing to do. Flutter whispered, "You put them all in the pods? That was your solution?" No, everyone went there willingly. I merely created a space where people weren't judged by how they talked or they looked, where they left their bodies behind and their minds moved forward to the next stage in human evolution. I made it so they would be happy, so they'd buy automated food for decades, living in their pods, so nothing would ever intrude. "But they are all running out of food and dying," said Flutter despairingly. "Yes," replied Milk Drop, "but it is very humane. They don't feel anything. You're the start of the new and improved human race, now with 50% more caring." "But what about my mother?" asked Flutter, holding the mannequin hand. "I am afraid that you are all orphans now. That was the plan. Remember to go to the amusement park. There is something for all of you." Flutter put her hands to her face, weeping gently. Juniper moved close and brought her under her blanket. "You can stay with me. It's better when there are two." Milk Drop boosted his empathy levels to 92%, then soon saw sadness in both girls, in their eyes, and he felt sadness too.
Come up, please. Entrance. Tiltrotor. And broken bumper. And a culture. Here is ancient theater.
Juniper, Zinger, and Flutter came upon an ancient theater in disrepair, a lone lady standing upon the stage with a graceful, melancholy air. She held a massive dive helmet and turned her eyes to them, and as they approached, said, "Hello, I am Lady Carmagnole, a singbot. I'm so glad you came to my show. Please find yourself a spot." Flutter and Juniper looked around at all the snowy chairs in dismay. Thank you, but I'm afraid we're on a quest and really can't stay. Lady Carmagnole looked past them to the roller coaster ride. Is it the Rabicorn and Daughter of Gears that you seek? I saw a pale man repairing them at the place where they died. Juniper and Flutter looked briefly at each other. We're not sure what we're to find, but who are the Rabicorn and Daughter of Gears? Lady Carmagnole smiled to the girls while the snow blew and danced around in leaps and twirls. When a daughter lay dying from a fever, Mother had preserved her mind within an eternal metal body. Inside, the daughter was the saved mind of a little girl now left alone. But the mother did pass, leaving the Daughter of Gears lonely and alone. So she withdrew into her computer mind and the world she disowned. Living amongst her memories of her mother, decades later she did cry in her great white space of safety, a digital standby. On the other hand, we had all believed, the Singbots and other semi-machines, that the Rabicorn was just a fable, a legend on TV screens. For the Rabicorn was a creation like us, but programmed with emotion, for it loved both human or machine equally and chose the daughter for its devotion. Lady Carmagnole walked across the amusement park with the girls and Ginger.
Then let's go to find Rabicorn and the Daughters of Gear. Please come on, please. So we go to Broken Roller Coaster. Someone may have confused them, so Rabicorn and Daughter of Gear, with Kumiko and Scarf in the last tour. But they are another story. Kumiko had been left in a coma from a car accident, and Scarf was her childhood dog. Otherwise, Daughter of Gears died from a fever, and Rabicorn was a semi-machine programmed with emotion.
They came to a metal girl holding in her lap the fabled Rabicorn, still in the pose now centuries old where she did mourn. A very long time ago I watched as the machine with the young girl's mind was skipping by the roller coaster, which was even then in decline. Suddenly a military machine came wanting only to destroy, because it was sent to hunt them both, and destruction was its only joy. I called for the theater security, but, well, they were long gone. All I could do was watch in fear as the Robo-Bear came on. But suddenly the Rabicorn was there between the girl and the beast and said, "Return to your master, or bring me your worst, but get to the daughter, you must pass by me first." The Robo-Bear and the Robocon fought until night turned to day, and the Robocorn made a decision to the daughter's great dismay. For to defeat the Robo-Bear, the Rabicorn must pay a price by impaling the savage beast with her horn. The Rabicorn's life was sacrificed. It was very sad, and the daughter wept, holding the only friend she'd known. One day the Rabicorn found her where her body lay curled and brought her back from her standby to the real world. The Rabicorn was her only companion, and now he had left her too. But then I was surprised to see the Daughter of Gears begin to take herself apart and combine her pieces with those of the Rabicorn, repairing its damaged heart. And in this way they lived and were one, embraced with vines to the sky. The world was collapsing around with time, yet they remain in her standby. Then Milkdrop came the other day, repairing both, where they lay entwined. Juniper said perhaps we're meant to join with their minds, so Flutter called Zinger together with Lady Carmagnole, and they walked towards a new age. Juniper and Flutter held hands under the blanket, fingers curled. Juniper prepared to connect her headset to the standby, while Flutter spoke to Hand, saying her goodbye. Mother, I must go for a bit, but I won't leave you in the snow. I would never abandon you. I will hold your hand the whole time. I promise I won't let you go. Juniper thought about standby and the sleepers in the pods, and then she said, I am confused. Is the Rabicorn a god? No, said Flutter. Yes, said Lady Carmignol. Juniper watched Zinger play. Humans can't be the only ones allowed to have a soul.
This is Robert. Robert got Rabicorn at home. Please look at his body. And Rabicorn is look like rabbit, but he has a comb. So move forward. Now we log into the virtual space standby. So please follow me.
After putting on the headset, they appeared in a great white virtual space where they saw a human girl and the Rabicorn embraced. The girl smiled to them. This is my best friend, the Rabicorn, and I am the daughter of Gears. We have not had guests for many years. You look like a human girl like us, not what we had seen. The daughter replied, This is how I was before entering my machine. It is so peaceful here, said Juniper. Can we stay a while? The daughter looked to the girls and said through a smile, Yes, you can, of course, but I think maybe it's time we came out with you. She turned to the Rabicorn. Are you ready for something new? The Rabicorn looked to Flutter, whose eyes were showing defeat, then to Juniper, who was hiding from the world beneath a bedsheet, and made the decision to stay with the children who stood, scared, lonely, and small. We will come to help you for as long as you need. And remember to stand. We must fall. Juniper and Flutter hugged, looking so pleased, and in their eyes, some of their fears were eased. You'll meet our friends and we'll stay together, said Flutter, while twirling light as a feather. We are very keen to meet the milk drop, AI. And all your friends too, and we can't deny that we're excited to go forward. Hand in hand as we walk together through the world, shaping our Brittle Epoch.
Yes, this is the end of the Brittle Epoch. Then let's teleport to the part 3 of the trilogy, the Sky Fisher.